How can we transform care into a holistic journey that not only addresses practical needs but also integrates well-being, resilience, and comprehensive support systems to empower us as caregivers and to enhance the quality of aging life? Today, my guest is Mary Jo Saavedra, a nationally recognized gerontologist, author, and an aging life care professional. With over a decade of experience in the aging and healthcare industry and walking alongside with her mom who is living with Alzheimer's, Mary Jo founded Fireside Group, becoming a guide for care management services for seniors and their families. Grounded in the values of compassion, innovation, and connection, Mary Jo's approach has deeply resonated with clients, families, solo agers, business professionals, and community members, establishing her as a trusted advocate and thought leader in the field. Throughout our conversation, we look at Mary Jo's holistic approach to caregiving. Why is it essential? How can it be effectively implemented? We talk through the often complex legal and financial challenges that caregivers face and share strategies to prioritize health and wellness for both caregivers and their loved ones. From leveraging community resources to fostering emotional and social connections, addressing even our own views on aging and sustaining that caregiver resilience, we are covering it all. Plus, we get exclusive insight into her resources, including her home life design program, the 6 pillars of aging well-being, along with her latest passion project, the Soul Shift Journey Tours. And we also learn about her vision for the future of gerontology. Here is my interview with Mary Jo. Hi, Mary Jo. I've been looking forward to not only meeting you, but being able to learn from you. So thank you for joining me today.
Oh, Nicole, I'm so excited to be here. It's such a pleasure. And I'm just loving the work that you're doing and following your episodes. So I feel quite honored to be in such a nice crowd and to be with you. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this. And we're going to talk about how do we empower caregivers? How do we integrate those holistic well-being aspects into our care, which is so important. And you come from this from not only a professional lens, but personal. And I'd love to hear more about that. How did you come into this space?
Sure. I think, like many of us who are professionals in this space, we have that family story that kind of nudged us over to this arena. But for me, it was my mom. I was actually studying healthcare administration. Did a pivot into business gerontology. I have a business background in high tech and also in finance. And during that time of my master's thesis, my mom and my sister had a fall, and it was pretty extreme. My sister has passed away, but she was 18 years older than me. So she was quite a bit older and was my mom's caretaker. She was a nurse. And so that experience threw us into the crisis that unfortunately most caregivers are familiar with.
Mhm.
And at that point, I realized as a gerontologist, I was shocked that I had no access to the tools I needed as a caregiver. My mom came to stay with me. My sister went to stay with her son. And so it catapulted me into crisis care while I was writing my thesis, and the whole time wondering, why am I reinventing a wheel that should be pretty well established?
Mhm.
This was back in 2012. So I did have my business gerontology hat on the whole time,
Mhm.
but I couldn't do much about that. So after my mom passed away, about 6 months after coming to live with me, I took time to rest and heal. I graduated and really thought, this is where my voice needs to be right now. I can make a big difference here putting this system together. And I'd already had visions of what it could look like.
Mhm.
And so it really inspired me that I really don't want other people to have to feel that way. You can't avoid crisis. You can plan and have all your ducks in a row, which gives you more choices when
Right.
when you plan. It gives you more choices when that crisis hits, but nothing really, nothing really quite gets you 100% there. So this at least allows people to know there is a pathway, there are professionals that you can build that village ahead of time that can come alongside you. So it's really a mission of helping others have an easier path than I did, and making sure those older individuals that we are caring for have the best life possible and keep their choices and their voice alive. So that is why I am here.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so needed. I think when we have choice, then we feel empowered. We can know all that's ahead of us to some extent. And you're right, it is so unknown, and it always will feel a little bit more, oh gosh, like a shock in some ways when we're in it. But the more
Oh,
we know, the more we're prepared, the more we feel supported. So thank you for your work. It's so needed.
thank you.
It is. And there's a perspective which I feel is so important because aging and caring, it is really holistic. It impacts so many different aspects of our life. Why do you encourage the holistic approach to caregiving? Why is that so important?
That, it's such a valuable question in the sense of understanding holistic. That word is thrown around a lot.
It is, yeah.
And integrative and holistic, they're all very critical in caregiving because we don't just show up as part of ourselves. It's like going to work, right? It's you leave so much of yourself at home when you go into an office. Well, when you're a caregiver, you can't afford to do that. Your person that you're, you know, in charge of making sure their life is the best it can be has many systems around them. So I learned really quickly when building the home life care design process that if I did anything in the financial pillar, wow, guess what? Really affected everything else in the different pillars.
Yeah.
If I did something in the caregiving medical field, I'd better have that legal paperwork in place. As an aging life care professional, which is a hat that I wear, a certification, um, taking care of clients, we learn really quickly that if you don't have all those pieces in place, it makes it really difficult for the professional caregiver as well as the home caregiver. So it has to be integrated in how we approach it. And I'm hoping that your listeners can really have access either through the library to my book or a discount I can give them later for other options to get it. But it has that approach really laid out. And there are 6 pillars of aging well-being within the program that are essentially your toolbox. And understanding that toolbox really helps you understand why it's so important to have the resources that you need in each one of them because they are fully integrated when you're doing caregiving.
They really are. We learn that as we go to just how intertwined, intermeshed, integrated that all is. For us listening, how would you define those pillars and how can we as caregivers effectively build that comprehensive support system for the people that we love?
Oh, great question. Yes. So the pillars, I'll tell you at a high level, they are spiritual and medical, financial and legal, your home environment, and then also your social environment. So those are the 6 areas that really surround any individual in their life. And of course, there's many nuances within those. The power is that the toolbox, the professional toolbox, and the tips and strategies, those are all pretty clear. We know best practices. All of my 6 pillars of aging well-being are based on evidence-based, scientific, proven strategies and tools. So when you go into any one of these pillars as your toolbox, you know there's a lot standing behind it, as well as the professional voices that are guiding you within the book, or if it's myself talking with you.
Yeah.
So the power behind that really is that every individual, every caregiver is so unique. The person they're caring for is so unique. Those struggles, are you working? Do you have children? Are you an executive? Are you a male or female? How old are you? Are you 25 and taking care of a grandparent, or 69 and taking care of your elder uh, uh, mom or dad, or aunt or uncle? So those stories will always be unique, and the comfort we can derive and the support is knowing that that toolbox is pretty solid, that we have a lot of great resources there to be able to address what comes up. And so you asked the other part of that question, and that is, what's the best way for the caregiver to really put it into action?
Yeah.
At the center of my program is the elder, whoever it is being cared for. They are the voice that is most important. What do they want? How do they feel? Has anybody asked them, those key questions as they're moving through the caregiving experience? The other side of that is really making sure that the caregiver and the person being cared for, you put the intentional effort behind building that village. And that village consists of professionals, it consists of community support systems and members, and then also your friends and family, your neighbors. When you dovetail intentionally all of those resources together ahead of time, then when crisis does hit, you know just who to call.
Right.
You know just who to turn to. You need a vacation and you need a break, you know just who to call, you know just who to turn to. So it really is a key aspect of the program, is focusing first on that village map. I call it my village map, and it has the 6 pillars laid out with it. Within those pillars, then you identify all those different resources, and my book can help you identify those people and which voices are most important to have
Right.
alongside of you.
Yeah, so helpful. And the peace of mind that that offers,
Yeah.
when we have that in place and know where to go. And if we're looking at the pillars more closely, we'll kind of go into some detail with each of those. How do we integrate, if we're looking at the spiritual and community support, how does that really enhance our well-being, not only as a caregiver, but for the people in our lives that we care for?
Well, science definitely is proving out that these are the 2 arenas that just heads above all others
Mhm.
are at the center of our well-being, are
Mm.
at the center of our resilience. And
Oh,
in order to build resilience, the way that the Home Life Design program introduces it, I designed it with that element of purpose, but at a much deeper level of, it's important to know what gets you out of bed in the morning. It's important to know if you're an older individual, maybe confined to bed or maybe housebound. What is keeping your spirit up during the day? Those things are critical, but it's also very critical, we now know through studies, is what is your attitude towards aging?
mm,
What is your reason for being here and going through this process? Those are very hard questions to answer scientifically. So we turn to that spiritual pillar and that realm where we can have practices that build that resilience within us, regardless of our religion, regardless of really what it is that we see as a higher power or what that might be for you. Maybe it's in nature and having those connections. Well, if you're an older person and you're confined to your home or your bed, it would be wonderful if you had a view outside and the outdoors could be inside with you
mhm.
while you're living your life. And how can you bring those enrichments in through your connections? A lot of times we as caregivers, we forget that our 80, 90, 100-year-old individuals, most of their friends and loved ones of their age have either passed away or are suffering with their own chronic illnesses or have moved away. And so it's very hard to have that enriching network of connections at that age. Wonderful to have grandchildren, wonderful to have people love you of any age, right? But it's also important to have somebody who kind of knows where you're coming from, kind of knows your experience. So there's wonderful programs out there. I know here in Florida, in Miami, there's the Papa program, and it's companions that can come and be with you online or in person. Those programs are everywhere, right? They're maybe not in the smaller communities, but these are things you can do for one another. You can start a community in your church that goes out and visits. You can start a community in your senior center, something like that, where you're all helping one another and networking on that connection level. So being connected to an actual religious environment, we've seen in science, in the studies in scientific evidence, that there is actual benefit in numbers of years that you add quality to your life, anywhere from 4 to 14, which is a very big spread. So that has to do with what are you getting from that community and what are you giving? Do you have that sense of belonging? Do people come and bring you those wonderful casseroles when you get sick or have knee surgery, whatever it might be? Those are the relationships you're building, so that later on in life, when things become a little more serious and the help becomes a little more complex, you have that safety net there that can be with you.
I love that perspective of right now we're in our building of those relationships so that we can have that foundation when we're older. Yes. And it
Yeah.
really is that resilience, especially in caregiving. We know how important that is, that we can get through all of the trials and the joys, and how do we have that resilience integrated in our life. You mentioned the time spent with different people and that connection. I saw a graph the other day and it was so interesting. It laid out when we have those social connections in our lifespan, and there's a huge spike when we're younger. Then there's a spike when we are in our middle years and at work, right? We're surrounded by coworkers, maybe not as much anymore with the working remotely, but historically, and then just how much that dwindles in our later years. And so, really, the importance of focusing on building those relationships, having that connection, having that support, and just how much it plays a role in
You
our
know,
life.
I
Yeah.
love that you point that out. It really matters, Nicole, for my generation and older. Making friends is not easy.
Mm-mm.
Moving into facilities, oftentimes you find cliques,
Yeah.
just like in high
Oh
school,
my
right?
gosh,
I
I
mean,
thought the same
you're
thing.
forced to revisit those
Right,
nightmares, right?
right,
So
right.
there's lots of hurdles and lots of skill building that
Mm.
you can do, but it's never too late. If you're 80 and you're listening to this, if you're 90 and you're wanting to do some of these things, there are definite strategies to help in all of these areas. And making new friendships is a skill that is so critical.
It is, and lifelong. Yeah, I worked in a senior living community, and I not only saw deep friendships develop later in life and how rich that is for those people that are involved in those relationships, but I did also witness cliques happen. And I remember thinking at that time, oh my gosh, it just never ends our whole life where
Never
same
ends.
people at work. It's like, even at this age, okay. So it just goes to show the importance of, how do we communicate effectively and have to navigate some of those friendship dynamics even later in life. There was a group of women who I loved, but they also were very particular about their dining room table, and only certain people could sit at that table. So just so
Well,
interesting
that's the
that plays
importance
out.
of what you did, right? And being in that community and making sure things were available. Making new friends is having a cup of coffee with someone after a class that you take and just seeing, okay, is this someone I could get to know more?
Right.
Or, taking dancing lessons. Lifelong learning is such a critical aspect to healthy well-being and healthy longevity.
Yeah.
So really engaging your curiosity. And keeping that active is a good resilience strategy. And it
Right.
kind of helps you come over some of those other hurdles of how do I make a friend? You can boil it down to some of those simpler steps so it's not so daunting.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And really, as a caregiver, too, I think of and even when I was working in the community, we also have, I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but a part of providing care is fostering those social connections. So looking at how can we support our older adult and maybe help with some of those introductions or I remember facilitating conversation to get people to be able to visit with each other or get to know each other and how do we do that with the people in our lives when we know it's important and they might not have the drive to do that independently from the beginning, but helping them facilitate those social connections is so important.
Oh, so valuable, so valuable. Things as simple as playing games or, having table talk and asking for those family memories at home. And,
Yeah.
there's lots to do at home. It's in the facilities. I know it's in senior living, there's so many rich resources to help that catalyst kind of take place. But at home, you have to be even more
You do,
intentional in
you're
seeking
right.
those out. But again, there's so many great tools and programs available for
There
that.
are. Yes. You mentioned Papa. Andrew Parker was a guest on our podcast sharing about Papa
Adore him.
a
Yeah,
few years ago. So great. So it is a wonderful resource, right? Additional when
yeah,
we're building that support system around us.
sure.
There's another piece of that, which is navigating the legal and financial challenges. And what do you see are some common challenges in that realm that caregivers face?
Oh, do we have all day?
I know, right? That's that's a big one.
Um,
Yeah.
they're actually two of my favorite pillars. They're all my favorite pillars,
Yeah.
but I will say that let's start with legal. And in my book, I start the toolbox with the legal pillar for a reason. And that is because as a caregiver, you really can't do a whole lot without it. You need those permissions. You need to understand what is wanted by the person you're caring for. So I think to kind of boil down what you're asking, the main challenge that I would see in private practice, as well as in my corporate role, is the idea behind the paperwork is very black and white. You can put a lot of information on there, your advanced directives stating the type of care you want, where you want it. But at the end of the day, when crisis hits and your power of attorney, your family, those people that are representing you when you're not able to, they have to deal with the gray because there's always a whole lot of gray when there's crisis. And so that can be a burden on not only the caregiver, but then making sure your wishes as the elder are protected
Right.
and that things are happening really the way you want. So that is the biggest challenge. The more you can communicate, so do your paperwork. You can always change it. It's surprising how many people don't have their will, their advance directive, and their powers of attorney. Those are the basics. There's
Mhm.
also a PULSed form, the physician's orders for life sustaining treatment. It's called different in different states, but that is for emergencies, and the advanced directive is for planning. So that's kind of your little toolkit for that. The more you can get that filled out and filed and given copies to the right people, the better off you'll be protecting your wishes. But then follow it up with the conversations. Have conversations that really explain why you want what you want so that when the hard questions come from the doctor,
Mhm.
or from whoever it is that you're advocating with, that you're able to have a better sense and that it doesn't fall on you to 100% interpret what this person may or may not want.
Yeah.
And then financially, of course, the number one question is, am I going to have enough to
Right.
get through retirement, to get through long-term care? What I will say on finances is having a good professional, just like in legal, having a good professional by your side can help you not make very costly mistakes. And if you're not able to afford a CPA or a certified financial planner or a wealth advisor, then it's important that you dig into the community. Lots of resources in the book, but the area agency on aging is a good place to start in most communities. AARP is in a lot of communities. There's a wonderful resource by Steve Garvey, who does the senior living guide, I believe it is called, seniorlivingguide.com, I believe. And he does a fabulous job by communities giving resources. And you can usually find nonprofits, pro bonos. Always ask, for pro bono work if there's somebody who can help in your small community. Definitely in larger communities, you'll find that. So lots of good resources. But number one advice there, having those professionals come alongside you and making a plan and looking at that long-term care, really weighing the options of an insurance policy for long-term care versus self-insurance. That depends a lot on your assets. It depends a lot on those control mechanisms that you want. When you have a policy, there's very few companies now that offer them because they're not good business for insurance companies. And then also, there's a lot entailed in triggering those policies. There's long wait periods that you have to pay 100% of the care for until it takes activation. And then it only pays an amount per day. And then there's a cap as to how many days. And so you need to know when you're paying your premiums, when are you paying beyond the benefit you're going to get? And that's where those experts can really help you from making mistakes. And then if you have one of these policies and you're getting into that area of, tipping over where now you're paying them and you're not going to get that money back, how do you get out of that, or how do you make the best use of it? What can you do with it? Versus self-insurance, where you tuck some money away. If you have those kind of resources, let that money work for you and grow. And then you get to use it however you darn well want to, right? So that's a privilege to be able to do that. But either way, it's really nice when you can have that expert come alongside.
It is, yeah. It helps with that overwhelm, right? That
Yes.
when we are not experts in those realms, to have the support of that.
Or
Yeah,
I heard from my friend Bob, I should do this. And
yeah,
then find out later on that wasn't the best thing for you.
right.
And there's some heavy consequences to that.
Yeah,
So,
that's a
yeah.
great point. That's a great point. And I know we touched on the spirituality and the social connections and financial, legal. There's a realm around health and wellness that is so vital as we are caring for other people, and not only our caregiver own health and wellness, but also for the people that we provide that care for. How do you find that that is just a supportive piece of our caregiving?
Yes. So, health and wellness is overwhelming. You have to deal with insurance companies. You have to deal with so many different specialists and doctors. You don't know what you don't know in any of these pillars, but in this pillar specifically, there are lots of guides for you within the medical community. Insurance companies now pay for care navigators. So hopefully, your policy may have something like that. The wonderful thing is that there are professional aging life care managers like myself who are highly trained and credentialed. It's a 2-year supervision, 2,000 hours, sit
Wow.
for your board. So it's a very serious credential, and they can navigate you through any of these pillars. But medical is really the specialty, making that care plan, advocating for you with your doctors, going to your doctor's visits, those kinds of things. And if they are a private pay, and so you can control the hours, but if you can't afford an aging life care manager until Medicare decides to cover them, then what you could do as a caregiver is hire them for an hour. Have them go over everything you're dealing with. They can get you on the right track in the resources for your community, for right in your neighborhood. And that's true of finances, that's true of legal, everything, social, all of them. They know where the good spots are, and they have their own formulas of success of who they work with. And so you get the best of the best. And if you pay for 1 or 2 hours of consulting with them, you're getting right to the core of it. You're getting right to the best of the best. But in my book, I'm also helping you and guiding you through that maze of research, understanding, we cover the top 10 chronic illnesses in there and really touch on the resources within each one of those chronic illnesses, and then what those care demands are going to be. We know that over 60% of people have one chronic illness by the time they reach 65 years old.
Mm.
So in best practices, we know that immediately from a financial planner and legal, we know that pivots you over to more heavy duty care planning.
Right.
Because if you have that now, it's only going to change over time. And if you are in that realm, we also know that 80% of those 60% have two. Huge. So
Yeah.
you really want to make sure your navigation is in place. If
Mhm.
you reach 65 and you don't have any chronic illnesses, you don't get a free pass, but you get a lot more longevity planning, and a lot more benefits to what you do put in place for your health and well-being. But it is never too late. Even at 80, you can do small things that are going to have wonderful outcomes for, let's take something simple from the spiritual pillar.
Yeah.
Tai Chi. Okay, everyone mostly has heard of Tai Chi or yoga or Pilates. I like Tai Chi and yoga because they have the meditative quality. And we know when you combine that meditation with the activity that you're doing or labyrinth walking, something that engages your body and your mind, it lowers your blood pressure. It usually affects your sugar levels and brings them down. It lowers your stress. So there are many other benefits. Each exercise has these benefits that can make a huge difference at any age that you're at for your quality of life today,
Right.
as well as, give you those kind of benefits for long term.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's so true. There are so many aspects of integrating different tools that just like you've had just mentioned the data with our health when we meditation, how it lowers certain health risks and that it's never too late. I think that's the
Yeah.
most encouraging thing too.
That is the key. That is the key. And Dan Butner of Blue Zones is really good about giving that message because I use about 12 different studies for my book when I put that together. But I love the Blue Zones because there are very clear messages there. But Dan is also real clear. Okay, this one adds this many years to your life. If you do this, it adds this many years to your life. But what he always says is nothing is going to push that needle forward for you. It's going to affect your quality of life today. He says it much more eloquently and better
Yeah.
than I'm saying it. So I hope I didn't ruin that for him. But basically, it's you're gonna live your life, and there are things you can do to definitely live longer. But it's about that quality.
It
It's
is.
about that healthy longevity is the key word there.
Mhm.
And so it's critical when we look at these aspects of the medical pillar that we understand we're being inundated with all these best practices. If you do this, if you eat granola, if you eat, goji berries, all of these different things that we can't possibly do everything. We can't possibly comply perfectly. So we pick and choose what's right for our life and for our time and try and kind of block out some of that noise. And so when you have programs like the home life design, and blue zones and the Stanford longevity map and things like this, it helps you as a consumer, as a caregiver, as an elder planning your own experience. It helps you narrow down what's important to you.
Yeah.
You get to pick and choose because at the end of the day, for me, it's about your quality. It's about quality of living. And it's great if you get some more quantity, that's wonderful, but we don't want that quantity to be there if you're miserable, in pain and suffering, right?
So
It's all about kind of moving the needle today and then receiving benefits later as well.
that's great advice. There's so much noise, as you say, that is
So
out
much
there,
more.
and that can feel super overwhelming. So taking what is for us for that quality is so important.
Do
Yeah.
you find that also? I mean, do you find it in all the work that you're doing that it's just like, okay, what is best to provide for my clients?
I do, yes. And everyone has thoughts about how we should do that and all the different resources. I think part of it is also a lot of caregivers don't self-identify as a caregiver. So first, where do I go for that support? And then once I find that, and even in the health and wellness space or longevity space, right? It's do this, eat that, implement this, and you're like, how do I define that and what's best for me? So yeah, for sure.
Oh, Nicole, I remember taking care of my mom, and she was in a memory unit. She had Alzheimer's
Mhm.
disease. And those last 6 months that I had her, all of this new emerging scientific information came out about coconut oil and the one component that in the coconut oil that helps with memory loss and things. And I remember stirring it into her coffee and just thinking, well, just maybe this will help a little bit. You just don't
Right,
know what you don't know.
right, right.
So it's important to have an imbalance and work with those professionals that
Mhm.
are the experts. Your doctors know what is going to come in nutritionally, as well as those practices and exploring information on your own and asking your doctor the hard questions
Yeah.
or the partner. So it's really important to hold them to task.
It is, it is. That's great advice. Thank you. So the other pillar that I'd love for you to share about is home, and that I know can be whether we're in home, aging in place is the term that people use, or whether we're in communities as we're aging. Can you share more insight on that? How is that? How can you be
Oh,
supported in that?
I love this pillar. I know I say I love them all, but I love this pillar because it is the one pillar that I can talk about with people and they immediately get interested. Their eyes get wide open. They're relaxed. I'm not talking about death. I'm not talking about medical. It's just a safe pillar to introduce a lot of really important subjects.
Right.
So I think the priority in the home pillar is really understanding yourself as a person. There's lots of great information in there. Several resources that I want to call out before I kind of go into the details is Ryan Frederick has a wonderful self-assessment tool that he uses on his website. And his book is The Right Place, Right Time. And I really love that book because for me as a gerontologist, it asks the fundamental question. The first question you need to ask is, are you doing anything about it?
Right.
Because you don't get to just age in place because you say you're going to stay in your home. When you're 80, who's going to be cleaning those gutters? This is the place where I give my clients permission. Hire the cleaning lady now, even if you don't need one. Have them come in a couple times a year, maybe once a month. Give yourself that gift. Learn how to hire people so
Mm,
that you get scam savvy and that you build these relationships of the local service people for when you're older. When you're 65, can you still get up on a ladder and clean the gutters? Yeah, most people I know in my circles can still do that. But should they? One fall and that's it. Your
yeah.
life changes overnight in not a very good way.
Mm,
So, really introducing those nuts and bolts strategies for being a homeowner so that number one, your kids don't worry about you. Number two, you don't inadvertently do something that is going to catapult you out of your home and into assisted living or, God forbid, skilled nursing, if it's that serious, and you're not able to return to your home. So lots of steps there to take. And that all starts with knowing, are you in the right city? Does it have the right medical care? Does it have the right walkability for you when you give up your keys, if that ever comes to happen? And lots of strategies to help you with that. Is there clean water? You know, is it a good, healthy environment? Are people out walking? Do you have access to good food? Healthy food, vegetables. It's surprising how many communities do not have that. So do you have the resources to be able to make a change? And what would that look like? What kind of community programs are there? Are there villages, networking villages in your neighborhood where seniors come together and they exchange their emails and they become part of a group, so that when the winter storms hit or when you're down with the flu and need a prescription, you're able to help each other? Those kind of things are going to help you stay in your home longer. So determine if you're in the right place, if you're with the right community, that you can build my village plan, right? So that you can do that. And then once you have those two pieces, then you move into your home. And in your home, you're looking at doing an assessment. You can do a do-it-yourself one. And then there are many professionals that have a certified aging in place certification. I have that. Go into the home, do that inspection. And a lot of people do it pro bono, or they do it as part of their remodeling service. Occupational therapists often have that CAPS certification. So it's something an aging life care manager can help you navigate and get all of those professionals in place during a couple hours of consulting, so that you build out that My Village map and you have those professionals in place and know where to turn. But then you start retrofitting your house, you know, making sure you don't have round knobs, but you have lever knobs, because our hands would get arthritis, right? Or gets awkward. Making sure you have zero entries. I mean, there's a whole list of things in the book that you'll be able to integrate into your new home or your home, so that it transitions with you as you're aging. And the sooner you can make those changes, and if you're going to stay in your home for as long as possible, the more you're going to program your body. So don't put them off. I mean, obviously, you don't need a chairlift elevator for a 2-story. Those stairs are important for you to keep walking. So you can put that in when you need it, but plan on the expenses for that. Who in your area would you get that from if you have a 2-story home? Because that will be a barrier for you staying in your home. So many, many nuts and bolts come into play when you do that assessment of your home. And then the fourth thing is have that conversation. Again, those conversations are so important. If you're a solo ager, who is your community that is going to surround you? And let them know what is important to you as you're staying in your home. And then if you have family, if you have children or extended siblings or family that you turn to for support, whatever that might be, then make sure they know your wishes and your concerns about being in the home. And the last thing I'll say from the financial pillar and from the social pillar is COVID really taught us that living in pods had tremendous benefits.
Wow.
And now multi-generational living is the number one fastest growing solution for aging in place. And, you know, the younger generations benefit just phenomenally with the help for working individuals, for the children to have more enrichment and more time with people who have more patience because they're not worn out. So it's a pretty dynamic and exciting pillar. The last step that you take in that is really having a plan B. Okay, what if the worst happens?
Yeah.
What if you have complicated medical equipment you need at home and it's just not possible? That has happened many times with my clients. Or what if your home just simply isn't the right fit? Is it time to sell it and move into assisted living? You need to have those plan Bs. Go check them out in your community. Pick now and hope you never have to use it, but pick now and find the one that makes you happy, because they're all so individual and different. And if you're an introvert or an extrovert, those communities are going to matter. Do you want one that has a garden that you can putter in? Do you want one that has arts and lecture programs? Or, maybe you want one that is just all about really giving you the support you need so you can keep your car and come and go and have community there to turn to. And it's just your support system. So there's a beautiful balance between the facilities and aging in place, and they both have their place, because when you need to be in community, or it's a choice and a preference that you want, there's nothing like that, right? But you need to find the best one, and you need to know their policies and procedures. We learned lots of things in COVID about that. So there's lots of good checklists. There's several resources for that, but definitely in our book, we've got wonderful resources for looking. Scott Fulton wrote that chapter and really hit on what was important to me as a care manager, and really hit those questions and resources there. And I know his website also has a lot of plethora of information in getting the home right for aging in place. So lots of good things there.
Yeah, so good. As you were sharing, it really is so evident how important it is to do it over time so that we're not in that crisis mode of, I need to change the knobs and have accessibility and find my community. I mean, I can't imagine how that would just feel like so much to do, and at a time when we're maybe not at the emotional place to do that. So, the importance of planning ahead and over time. And you talk about the multi-generational piece, and my grandma moved into our family home when I was 15. And so it was a part of my life, and having her there was just such a special time, and it grew our relationship. And I can't imagine growing up without having grandma there and cheering at my games and being able to tell her about who I was dating and all the friend things. And she was just such a wonderful part of our family, and that intergenerational piece of being able to live with her. It was not only, I'm sure, just a blessing for us. Actually, I know it was a blessing for us, but I know that it was supportive for her in those years of her life too. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and it's a real beautiful purpose element, right? Giving purpose to an elder and having those special relationships that other people can't fill.
Mhm.
And really understanding as elders, I'm 64, and as I move into all these beautiful relationships and understanding what I want for my future, there's times when it's really good to impose on your kids.
Yeah.
We live in a culture that we are like number one on individuality, and social countries that are more on communal and social aspects. That's where their elders thrive. So it really is important to have family responsibility and units, and we really moved away from that. Luckily, COVID has turned that on its head a bit. And
Mhm.
so hopefully we'll take it and we'll run with it, because we're meant to live in communities, right? Even if it's just next door, we know the benefits are huge.
Mhm.
So it doesn't mean you have to give up all your privacy and independence. You can do very independent living, having your own room or having your own space in a home. So
Right, right. Oh, such good points. There's a term that you use that I just love. It's called radical amazement. Share with us more about that.
oh, well, as I was putting my business hat on and really thinking about all this onslaught of information, what we talked about before, that all of these things that um, come into our knowing, and what do we take away and what do we hold on to and integrate? Radical amazement is my tool for allowing that to happen. And so what I've done is in my services, I have the book available at the library. I have lots of free downloads on my website. Those are growing by the week for very concrete resolution for solutions. I wanted to do courses and workshops, and I am doing those. I'll be offering more and more of those as well. But I want to give a master class. And this is really important for caregivers. It's important for those adult-child relationships, for couples who are planning, for solo agers. It's an opportunity to take them out of their normal environment and expose them to radical amazement. And what I mean by that is something that makes your jaw drop, some beautiful aspect of life. And it can be a child's laugh, it can be a beautiful vista. I took a group in November to Peru, to the Sacred Valley, Cusco, and Machu Picchu. We had a ball. We had couples, we had parents and older adults, a few solo travelers. It was just wonderful because what it does is it removes you from your normal environment, puts you in an environment like landing on the moon. This culture and these traditions, and the Urubamba is a blue zone lifestyle. You get off the plane and you're like, where am I and what's going on? It only takes a day to remove all of that connection to home. And you're now in this place. And through just touring and being in these amazing places, you are having radical amazement that makes you think about your life. It makes you open up and spiritually consider, what am I doing? What do I really want? What do I want to integrate back home? We're doing cooking lessons and dancing lessons, and every morning, one of those lovely sunrise ceremonies, the spiritual practices. So we do Tai Chi and healing sounds and labyrinth. We let you try it all on, but I'm not teaching. We're just experiencing and enjoying, and you're living many of those best practices while you're on this 8-day tour.
Yeah.
Then we come home and we have a master class online. And all of a sudden, it all makes sense. I'm referring back to the things that we did and how those integrate. And because of that radical amazement, you didn't have fear. You didn't have the plethora of information coming at you. You were experiencing things, and either you were enjoying them or stretching yourself, or perhaps learning, that's not going to be a practice that I want to continue to do, but I really love this one. I can integrate that, because you immediately see the benefits of that and the styles of plant-based eating and how to do nutrition in different ways. Everyone ate differently on the trip. So radical amazement is really understanding that connection with your spirit and having the opportunity to be able to do a bucket list item, to experience blue zone lifestyle, and to really come to connection with yourself in a new way that just gets the noise and the clutter out of the way so you can focus a little bit.
What a transformative and wonderful experience. I want to go.
I would love to
Sounds
do it just
wonderful.
I
Oh,
just love it. And to see the changes, to
yeah.
see couples connect in new ways,
Wow.
and to see people who were apprehensive about retirement go home and quit their jobs and embrace this new perspective of life that they developed for themselves. Certainly did not tell them, what to do with their second half of life, but
Right.
inspired that, right? You want to be growth. After 50 years old, you start losing that vision, your hearing, your knees not doing so good. When you're getting into your 60s, some of your friends are moving away, some are getting sick.
Right.
And, loss really creeps in. You have to 70, now you're losing friends pretty consistently. And so maybe your mobility has shifted, or now maybe you have an illness. And so it can easily be a story of loss as
Mm.
we get older. In order to have quality and healthy longevity, your mindset is the number one most important thing you can do for yourself. If you have a positive mindset towards aging and you have this beautiful grandmother instill it in you, that is the gift that you're going to carry with you, is you're going to have that model for how it was done. So if you don't have that model, then you have to intentionally build it. Just like you're building My Village, you want to take that radical amazement and build your attitudes that you're going to take with you for a growth mindset in the second half of life.
And we need that encouragement. I know that we logically know things, right? Okay, that mindset's going to help us age well, but it's having those voices surround us that can speak into our life consistently that will help shape that
Oh,
mindset.
I love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. Well, imagine sitting in a boring Zoom, maybe not boring, but
Mhm.
a master class that's giving you, again, so much information and you're overwhelmed. How much are you really gonna, when I say you need to have a growth mindset for your second half of life or have a positive,
Yeah.
positive aging attitude, you're going to go, that's like telling someone to have self-care when they're in the trenches of a
Right.
crisis. It
Yeah.
just doesn't translate.
Yeah.
So having that space and intentionality, I think, however you can get that,
Oh,
is
for
really
sure.
important. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I love that you not only bring people to experience all of that, but then the follow-up and be able to tie it back to that
Yes.
experience. I
That,
mean,
that's the magic.
that's the
That is
magic.
the magic. Yeah. And I intentionally kind of package that in that home life design. That's the intentionality behind the name. It
Mhm.
doesn't say aging in place. It doesn't say, your life planning for the rest of your life. All
Mhm.
of those things tend to trigger people.
Right.
Home life design is very embracing. It's about making our home everything we want and making our life everything we want. We
Mhm.
want that to just blossom and thrive. And no matter how limited you are mobility wise or your health, even with Alzheimer's disease, there is major room to be able to do that thriving and build those programs in. With Alzheimer's disease, you have music therapy and art therapy and dance therapies you can bring in, and respite care for the caregiver, and really doing that self prescription now
Mhm.
as a caregiver for what you need that nurtures your soul, and then build those practices in so that all of a sudden when people are saying, are you taking care of yourself? What are you doing? Can I help you? You've already got your prescription for yourself. Only you know what's best for you. And so building that self-care prescription now, use it for the rest of your life, whether it's caregiving or something else. What is it that gives you? Is it a massage every month? And then taking a hike in nature,
Mhm.
every couple 2-3 weeks or weekly. And maybe it's taking a vacation with your significant other, your partner, for every 3 months, and go somewhere, or every month if you can be able to do that. And it doesn't have to be expensive. So intentionality again, that's where the planning magic is, right?
It is. It is. And home, I love that because home is really where we are, wherever that is. And how we define that.
Yeah.
That's so
Being
great.
around that table,
Yeah.
being around that table is just the magic bullet. It
Mhm.
is.
Mhm.
So,
It is. How are you encouraged about not only the future of care, but also what are you seeing? What gets you excited about these next few
ah,
years?
yeah, as a gerontologist, I look at the landscape a lot to see I'm an applied gerontologist, so I want really good, solid research that I can hang my hat on when
Mhm.
I'm developing my programs and helping individuals plan for their future and doing care planning. I no longer do crisis management, but when I look at that landscape, it's so exciting because in 2012, when I started this path, I had a technology background. I love what tech is
Mhm.
doing in the aging in home and also in communities. I love what it's doing in our normal day-to-day life, and it has struggled with that, and it is really turning the corners on being effective at impacting life. Lori Orloff has got a wonderful newsletter if you're ever interested in her Aging in Place. Just she does reviews all the time on the technology. I also see a lot of shifting with each one of the pillars. They're now starting to talk to each other. So in 2012, I was this little business gerontologist geek over here doing things way before people really knew what to do with them. And that's okay. The people I was in conversation with at that time were trying to figure out the medical silo. They knew that they needed this thing called a care manager and a navigator. They had no idea what to throw at it. So they put a registered nurse, and I got to come alongside with that registered nurse and be able to see what they were thinking about for their program, and then share some of that gerontological foundation with them. This was in Oregon, and it was a Medicare program that was being introduced. So now fast forward to 2024, and we now have silos that understand, okay, for the financial silo to work, I need to know what the heck is going on over here in the medical and in the home environment. But I also need to know what kind of legal protections are in place, and who's going to be coming in and giving that care, and how do I price that, and how do I plan financially for my client when this whole illness factor really pivots what they're going to need in later life, and what is in later life that I need to plan for my clients for. So all of those things through programs like mine are being answered. And now a certified financial planner can actually pick up that book or call me for consultation and get that roadmap that they need for their practice and feel really comfortable with the fact that they're planning for those softer areas as well as the concrete ones like medical and legal. So again, that integration is so important. I will say one thing, it is still hard credentials wise. It's okay to get information from another silo of those pillars for a lawyer to call financial planner and work with them with a client. They have to have permissions and things like that. An aging life care professional can talk to all of those people. They have the credentials to cross those silos, those professional boundaries, right? A lawyer is not going to commit themselves to anything that is outside their preview, right? Same with the CFP. They're not going to be giving you legal advice or telling you tips on anything like that. A planner like myself, who is certified in those areas and has that umbrella aging life care professional, as well as my gerontology and finance. But those things matter when you're doing the navigation for your loved one, to be able to see that in the landscape and know now that there is someone that can pop into all six and be okay, that they can actually give you solid advice and then send you to the right professional with the right language so that you're prepared. And that's what Elder Care 101 Updated does. Everything is in there really to give you that baseline that allows you to care for another human being and plan for yourself. And it's based on those proven methodologies and evidence-based science research that really get you over the finish line. And so that instead of feeling like a deer in the headlights in a crisis, you feel confident. You still, of course, are going to have overwhelming moments, but you know where to turn. You know just to pick it up, look in there, find out who you're supposed to be talking to. More importantly, you've built my village. You know who your professionals are in each of those 6 areas. You've established some key relationships, so you can just pick up that phone. Even simple things like, who do you call in the middle of the night? So this is a radical difference that caregivers have right now compared to just 5 or 10 years ago.
I agree.
So I think we will see more and more support businesses coming to market. to help fill all of those niches now that they're being identified. And now that we have such compassionate individuals who are making their professions about what is important to them.
Yeah. Oh, so true. Great, great insights. Great insights. I was at CES, was able to witness the panels and the
Oh, so
AAP
rich.
Age Tech Collaborative, which was incredible. So to your point,
Oh,
there is so much happening in technology in the aging
yeah,
space. And yeah,
yeah,
we've got a lot to look forward to. And it's so true. They weren't talking to each other before those pillars,
right,
but you can really see
right.
the considerations now of looking at all of that holistically. So great
Well,
insight
and
on that.
AI is just going to
Yeah.
rapidly
Yeah.
make that so. I mean, it's
Mm,
going to help come up with those connections.
it
And
is.
I think of all the material and all the research that just kind of gets left on the side because it is overwhelming and you
Mhm,
can't take everything.
mhm.
AI can. They
Yeah.
can, that AI methodology is really
Synthesize. Yeah.
going to come in there and identify really good stuff, I hope. That is my hope for it. Not to
I
replace the human touch, but to empower us with,
right.
yeah,
Yeah. To free us up for more of that human connection when we can have the bandwidth for it, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. So great. So good.
Oh,
Well, where can we learn more? How do you support those
oh,
caregivers? Where can we connect with you?
oh, thank you for asking, Nicole. I would very much like to point your listeners to my website where they can find everything they would need, including discounts on the book and more program information about the tours to Peru. And I will be expanding those in the United States and elsewhere, as well as a lot of free downloadables. They can reach out to me and ask me questions. And my website is Mary Jo Saav. So it's MaryJo, S is in Sam, AAV.com. And then I also have Instagram at Mary Jo Saav. And then I am on Facebook under Fireside Group, which is the name of my company. And then also, you can find my book in the library. I want to make sure that there are entry points for every
Mm,
level of affordability. And so that's why I try and put everything on my website is free. My classes, I try and have different levels of entry points for that. And then the same with my coaching and counseling, different entry levels for that. So I would love to hear from everybody and
yes.
good conversation over a cup of tea.
I agree. We'll include all of those places to direct people and tell
Well,
us the
thank
name
you.
of your book so we can also
Yes, it
find out.
is Elder Care 101 Updated, which is behind me. And I have the most amazing contributors to this book. So you're getting my framework and the perspective of someone who navigates a lot of individuals of all ages caring for other people. And that gives these authors the framework to make sure they're answering what I usually have to undo, whether it's a long-term care insurance policy or legal paperwork or
Mhm.
getting those pieces in place. The voices in here are so good at what they do, and then to be able to see it from that care management perspective and have it put in that context just immediately gets you to the bottom line of doing things the best you can.
Yeah, so helpful. I'm so
Yeah,
encouraged that your voice is in this space. I've
oh,
loved
thank
this
you.
conversation.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
sharing with us. And
Oh, I'm so honored to be sharing with you and the collaboration with my contributors and voices like yours, getting the work out there to make everybody's life a little bit easier.
yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are you looking for another encouraging podcast? Let me introduce you to my friend Elizabeth Miller, the host of the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast. She visits with family caregivers and dives into their caregiving and self care strategies. She also highlights that family caregivers are the experts in caregiving. Beyond the informative conversation, Elizabeth reveals the tried and true resources and practical self-care tips that empower caregivers to prioritize their health and happiness. You can find the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast wherever you download your favorite podcast, or go to her website, www.happyhealthycaregiver.com. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.